Well, thanks so much for having me, and if you don't mind, I'm going to get right to it, because there's a lot of important things that we have to consider in America today. And when I leave home in the mornings, oftentimes my kids will ask me, my 6-year-old, my 8-year-old, "Daddy, where are you going today?" And I said, I'm going to Noonan, where Mommy used to work nearby, and when she worked in Stockbridge as a school social worker. Noonan's not that far away from there. I have a somewhat village-like adopted niece here in Noonan. She is now a junior, rising junior at Columbus State, and she was here as a 14-year-old mother at 14 years old because of a tragedy in her family. And she had the child, graduated from her high school with a 3.8 GPA, is a Hope Scholarship, still holding on to it because she still has a 3.8 at Columbus State. She's helping out with one of the Republican campaigns that we're having down in Columbus. She is an example of the fortitude people have when they truly understand and love America. And my kids always ask, so Daddy, are you going to be telling people how to love America today? Because that's how they describe my work. Somebody said to one of my son, my 6-year-old, we saw your daddy on TV on Georgia Public Broadcasting, on the same TV show Elmo is on. and I said, oh yeah, they saw that. He goes, but Daddy, he said a bad thing. And I said, what did he say? He said Republicans are mean.
Elmo said that?
No. His friend, Charlie, said the Republicans are mean. And I said, what'd you say to him? I said, no, Republicans help people love America. And my 6-year-old son, Luke, is right at that stage now where he's dreaming a lot. And it's a good thing, because when you're dreaming, you're sort of wrestling, sort of like Jesus in the wilderness, and you're coming up with your sense of where my security lies. And America has great security because of very, 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 very pinpointed reasons. And I want to talk a little bit about that, and then we'll move on and we'll talk about minority engagement and our strategy. We'll get into all that. I know most of you know a lot about what we're doing when it comes to the strategy of minority engagement. I'm going to start my time here because I'm going to talk for about 15 minutes. And the best part of what I like to do when I speak is to actually have some time to answer questions. And so I want to leave 10 minutes or so to answer questions. So I do something lately with my children that I also find works well with adults. And that is, we play a game where before I tell my son and my daughter a bedtime story, oftentimes say to them, throw out 3 words and I'll make up a story related to your 3 words. Well, we're grown-ups. We don't have to have stories like butterflies and candy, preferably cotton candy. Those are the words that they throw out but what's on your mind? And as you throw those words out, I'm going to write them down and make sure that as we speak and talk today with each other, that I cover those words, because I want to know what's in your heart, what's on your mind. We're in a majority precinct here in Noonan, and that could be on your mind. We are in a place where there's a dream that is being cast by people saying they want this and they have hope for that. But at the same time, we're looking at things and this doesn't look like a dream to me. This looks like a nightmare. And so what's on your mind? What are your hopes? What are your worries? What do you have questions about minority engagement? Somebody throw out a word. And it doesn't have to be racist, because you're not.
Successful engagement.
Successful engagement. Gotcha. Any other words?
Personal accountability.
Personal accountability.
Liberty.
Liberty.
Integrity.
Integrity. All right, you're supposed to only do 3 ideas in a speech. So that's what, 1, 2, 3, 4? But any more?
Freedom.
Freedom. All right. Let me just start by telling you a little bit more about myself. My life has been both dream and nightmare. But that's nothing to be afraid of, because when you have nightmares and you do wrestle with them and you come out of them and you're even able to make something of them, then it only makes you stronger. 3 weeks ago today at 11:30, I had a heart attack, a massive heart attack. The why about that is because I have a certain lineage. In my family, my sister had a heart attack at 28. An elder sister had a heart attack at 32 and a stroke, left her half paralyzed. Her physician said you should abort the baby that is inside of you because, or told my mother she should abort the baby because she doesn't have her faculties. She can only speak in numbers. She's paralyzed. She probably won't ever get any movement back. There's a child inside of her. You should get rid of it. Another sister died of a heart attack not long ago at 46 years old. My brother had a triple bypass at 34. He's doing well, living over in Abu Dhabi as an expatriate, loving America and appreciating everything about it and trying to tell people why America is important for the world. My own heart attack came at 50 years old. A little later than the rest, because I did things a little different, and I was able to go a little farther. But I had 100% blockage of the primary artery. And not being able to have your heart be fed by the things that you need to sustain your body is sort of like the crisis and the nightmare that America is in. The things that have made this country great were the same things that those people who were captured in a nightmare coming across the Atlantic, those people called African slaves, coming across the Atlantic in a boat, a large boat. They could have just had a simple nightmare, but even a good liberal like Steven Spielberg could see, as he did one of his movies, and he had one of the characters in the movies, a slave, trapped, going someplace he knows not where, looks into a Bible and sees freedom. I see freedom, he said in that book. That is America's history. It is a nightmare, yes, but it also holds a dream for us. And there have been many other boats in America's dream and nightmare. We have the boat that is characterized by Washington coming over the Potomac. That's been an important image of me. First, he prayed. And then he got in the boat and he had the American flag with him and he sought to cross the Potomac. But America's boat is leaking. That boat that Washington was in was a boat that sought freedom, sought the other side of the Potomac River for liberty, sought the other side of the Potomac River that America may have a future and a hope. But the way that people look at our boat, America, the boat, that carries so many people to new places, they look at our boat as something purely for them. I'm reminded as the crisis that happens that when you're in tumultuous water and you're trying to get to the other side, you may even be a swimmer, and you're out somewhere and you got a weak swimmer next to you, and you're swimming across in tumultuous water, and a weak swimmer is next to you, and you realize, you tell that swimmer, lay on your back, float, rest. And that swimmer is panicking because they don't have confidence. They come from a place of poverty when it comes to their ability in the water. And as I was a little boy and I grew up and I joined the Boy Scouts and I learned to swim, I became a lifeguard. It was my first job. I became a lifeguard at 14 years old because there was something when you qualified for welfare in those days, you could work at 14 because they had a Cedar work program. So your parents, instead of just saying, give me something, where, let's give you a way to support yourself. And I learned that way. And one of the first things I learned in lifeguard training was that you actually, in the old days, they used to teach you how to fight people off of you so that you could actually save them. So you could save them. Even to the point that Bill Moore, who was in charge of Ocean City Rescue in Virginia Beach and Ocean City Rescue in Maryland and Rehoboth and Chincoteague, he said to me, Leo, if it gets to the point that you need to, you punch them in the face because that's how you're going to save them. Otherwise, they're going to grab your neck and they're going to pull you down. And that's how people are looking at America's boat. They know that it's going someplace that they want to go. They know that America, as they say in some countries, and I've visited a few countries, America's streets are paved with gold. There's money growing on trees. But yet, they look at our boat, and our boat now is taking water. Our boat is sinking. And if you have people who are in that boat, some are bailing water, some are paddling, but then you have people who don't know what paddling is, and they don't know what bailing is. And my forefathers, people whose blood is in this sand, who lived in the Virginia plantations, who helped shape America, we're in that boat. Black Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans have been in that boat here as naturalized citizens, as people who have come through the great annuals of time and the epics that we've gone through in America. Those people are in that boat and they know the value for which they are paddling. But other people are trying to jump into that boat and they don't know the value. All they know is they want to get to the other side from whence they came, which is all travesty and death and piss. That's what people are living in. And we have to do something about that as Americans. But the first thing we have to do sometimes is protect the boat. So when Governor Deal wrote a letter saying, you can't just drop people into our boat, to Obama, that's not compassionate love of your neighbor, to just drop extra people into the boat, because the people who are already in the boat could die. It's more compassionate to consider the weight that the boat can take. It is not compassion to look at somebody's home and say, I automatically want to ensconce your home and give it to somebody else, or let some other people move in with you, without considering whether or not that home is suitable to take care of children. You could end up doing more harm than help. That is the uncompassionate idiocy of liberal living. They don't really think about the long-term effect of the decisions they make. When we attack a religion in our country, successful faith is a faith that can lead to works and produce works. And that is the faith that my people have had for a long time. When I say my people, in this case, I speak of all Americans, all people throughout the whole nation, of Jesus Christ and the Judeo-Christian traditions that we have inherited from him, and the same slave that came across the great Atlantic and saw freedom. I remember my parents saying things that they got from the Bible, you know. I remember my parents saying, man, don't work, man, don't eat. I remember my parents singing the Mahalia Jackson song, God Bless the Child That's Got His Own. I remember my parents says, look, if you bury your talent, you won't get blessed. I remember my parents saying things like that. Those are things from faith. And those are things that allowed someone like even me. My kids look at the photograph of the house that I grew up in, and the tin roof and the falling off porch, and they see that there was an outhouse in the back and they wonder what it was. And then they see the house that we live in now. My kids are going to a school that's Westminster is $20,000 a year to attend the school. And I came from a lady who raised a family by herself. The most money she ever made in 1 year was $13,000. She raised 5 kids. And she raised a lot of other kids too. And she taught me everything that I know about engagement. We had a garden at my house. And there were some people who came to eat from the garden that my mom just said, you know, Mr. Joe wants some collards. They've been going through a lot of trouble. Give Mr. Joe some collards. And sometimes Mr. Joe would come and he'd look at the collards and there'd be a little brown stuff on the edge of the collard. And he'd kind of throw that collard back into the garden, and he'd pick up another collard that didn't have any brown stuff. And I would get real angry about that. I was like, wait a minute, this guy's coming to get stuff from us for free. And he is like being picky and choosy about what he chooses. You know? And my mother would say, no, go ahead and give it to him. But then the next year, my mother said, go down to Mr. Joe and tell him we're planning today. And I go, well, why am I going to do that? That guy ain't going to do nothing. And she said, do what I said, boy. So I went and did. I went to Mr. Joe. I said, we're planning today. Mom says, do you want to come help? Well, Mr. Joe became the guy who taught us how to plant our pole beans a little bit deeper. He ended up teaching us how to do things with our tomatoes. The first time I ever seen a newspaper, really, because Mr. Joe used to collect newspapers from places and recycle and do stuff like that. I had never seen a newspaper until Mr. Joe came with a stack of newspaper and put them around our tomatoes in order to conserve water better. In other words, Mr. Joe, because this time we didn't do outreach with him, this is the difference between outreach and engagement. This time, Mr. Joe, we did engagement with Mr. Joe this time. This time, instead of us just giving him stuff and him not knowing how to do, or we not thinking he knows how to do anything else, we actually engaged with him and he helped us create a better garden. And that's where our hope is when it comes to the dream or the nightmare. This is how we move into the dream of King, because we get to see how doing things a little differently can create a different result. And so the lesson I got from my mother about engagement was that. I mentioned I was a 14-year lifeguard. I became a lifeguard because I moved into a Section 8 housing community. I'd never seen a cement pond before because I grew up on a pig and peanut farm. And there was a swimming pool with trash cans, bicycle wheels, all kinds of junk into it. And when we moved to Chesapeake, Virginia, so that I could get a better education. That's what my mama did for me. And when we did that, I said, I want to swim in that pool. And my mother said, well, stop stealing all my chlorine bleach and pouring it in that pool. Why don't we form a civic association? My mother taught me my first lesson about organizing right there. She formed a civic association, got everybody to chip in, and they got some HTH, swimming pool, oxidizer, which is chlorine bleach, as you all well know, in a different form. And my mother helped me open that swimming pool up. And that became my first work that I did. Okay, I actually managed 6 inner city swimming pools by the age I was age of 16 that I opened because all the white people were afraid to work at those swimming pools because they were in urban communities that were really dangerous. Yeah, I had guns pulled on me, knives pulled on me. But then I got smart. And Virginia, Portsmouth, Virginia, had the first black mayor in Virginia's history, a guy named David Hawley. He had a daughter. She wanted to learn to swim. I taught her, and then I hired her. And when I hired her, I knew that he would send the police to the neighborhood. That's engagement, folks. That's engagement. So as we do the work of the Republican Party, as you do the work that you do so well, look for ways to engage rather than just to do outreach. Outreach is important. It's a compassionate thing. But we really don't have much to prove. Christians and conservatives are the biggest givers in the world. What would the world be without Christians? What would the world be? Because Christians have great stories, and the stories make sense. You know, I'm reminded my mom and everybody used to get together and they pull out the big black cauldron and they'd make apple butter from various different types of apples. Another sign of engagement. They were doing it together and trading and sharing. There are different ideas on how to make better apple butter. Well, I do it this way, I do it this way. Well, I don't boil my apples, I do them this way, I steam my, you know, they do all that stuff and they get it together. They also have bread baking days where they get together and bake bread together. Because I think of that and I go, you know, my mom must have really paid attention to Matthew 13:33. The kingdom of heaven is likened unto a woman breaking bread. And I think about what we've got to do in this work that we've got to do to make sure that we're not in a nightmare but a dream. And we've got to look at the best ideas of that kind of parable. The kingdom of heaven is likened unto a woman baking bread. And what does she use when she bakes that bread? I mean, she needs flour, some dark grains, some light grains, put them all together, add a little water to get them to stick together. She needs to do a little gnashing and grinding and molding of things. Somebody needs to lay hands on it. But even before you lay hand on it, you need to put a little salt in it, because if we as people who are grassroots have lost our flavor, we can't add to the taste of the bread. So we put a little salt, but not just any salt. We use what kind of salt? Morton salt. A good Jewish salt, you know? That's what we use. And then we got to make sure that that bread and all the ingredients come together and all the chemistry starts to happen there, that when we put that bread in the oven finally, it's not just going to go flat. It's actually going to rise. You know, Maya Angelou has this great poem, and, you know, God bless her, and we've lost her, but she was one of the people that inspired me when I started out at College of William and Mary, and then later when I heard her do that poem, "And Still I Rise." But we've got to be able to make things rise up. We've got to inspire people to rise up. We've got to do that, and sometimes it's going to take some extra insertions of different ingredients. And what do we put in bread to make it rise? We put good yeast in it. And what's one of the best yeast you can get out there? Some Fleischmann's yeast, another good Jewish yeast. And we put all this stuff together, and we come together, and we rub a little butter on it. Rub a little butter on it, because it's just going to make it brown a little bit more on the top. But the fact is, the bread is made up of many things. And so here we are now, we break bread together so that we can have something to serve the world, so that our boat can be sustainable, so that more people can jump onto it, and more people can get to freedom. That's the work that we do in minority engagement. And I'll tell you, so that work, who's breaking bread with us? You are. You are supporting. You are learning. You are opening yourself up to being called racist, to being called people who don't like immigrants. You're opening yourself up to those kinds of attacks. That kind of a vulnerability is actually part of the solution. It is. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good when my car gets keyed, or when somebody puts something in my mailbox that wasn't very nice and saying about my family as traitors or sellouts, and the kind of things that minority conservatives get attacked about. It doesn't feel good, but I mean, we're not suffering like Jesus suffered on the cross. When you look at it that way, and you look at our source of inspiration, this is nothing. It really isn't. A heart attack, I'm standing here today 3 weeks later, strong as an ox, once only using 5 cylinders in my 6 cylinders I have, but now I got all 6 cylinders because they open it up. That is the grace of God. And that is our hope, because we can always hear, we can always do better. But you can't do better from just telling people that we've got hope for you, but we've got a boat that is going to sink. And that is the liberal agenda, to tell people that we've got something for you. Black Americans for 60 years have been suffering under Democratic rule. Detroit, who wants to live in that Democrat state? Not I. Chicago, who wants to live in that Democrat state, in that city? Not I. Who wants to live in these places of piss and death? Broad in Maine, Broad and MLK, right here in downtown Atlanta. Go there and you smell piss and death. And whose office is sitting right there, all shiny and gleaming? Congressman John Lewis's. Selling something to people that is piss and death. So that's why you must continue to do what you're doing. That's why you must embrace the minority engagement, because the trends are changing. 44% of Georgia are racial minorities. 33% of them are African Americans. Now here's some hope. 45,000 are identified staunch Republicans. 45,000 African Americans are identified staunch Republicans. You may not know that because they're afraid. They are. And I know sometimes you too, we're afraid to go across and speak the difference. But know that they're afraid too. I tell them, come out of the closet. And yesterday a group of black women and Asian women and Latino women sat down and had lunch with me, and we developed a minority engagement platform for women's agenda around Governor Deal and Purdue. We developed that yesterday, and it'll be coming out soon. But they said, Leo, don't tell them to come out of the closet, tell them to come out of the shadows. And that's what we're seeing. So out of the shadows now, I have 142 what I call surrogates around Georgia who are minorities, who can help you with knocking on doors, who can come and join you for phone banking, who can be the bridge builder for you. And I had a young lady that I liked, and I was hanging around a bunch of football players, and the football players had done some bad things. And so the football players developed a bad reputation. And so I wanted to go in and say hello to this young lady, but she was like, you're hanging out with the football players. So I knew a young lady that she entrusted very much, and I said to her, can you go and tell her that I'm not like the rest of these guys? And she goes, do it yourself. And I said, no, she won't listen to me because all she sees is a football player. And so my friend went and did that, and I was able to get the lunch date. She was a bridge builder. She was a connector. So we're trying to create more people who are connectors for all of us, or connectors. And we want you to know who they are. I mean, it's Jessica Burnett down in Augusta. In Augusta, we started the CSRA Minority Engagement Group, and down in Augusta now, that group has they have about 12 people. They're knocking on doors. They're part of campaigns. And then Brian Baird, our victory director from the RNC, says that Black American group is the strongest and most active group doing campaigning in Columbia, Augusta, Richmond County, all that area around there. Most active. In Savannah, we have 5 or 6 young men who are on the radio every weekend doing editorials and such. They're doing great work down there. Jabari Bryant, we have Robert Donaldson. Savannah State now has a Black Republican Council at Savannah State. So you know about the work we're doing at Morehouse. Chairman Priebus speaks of it all the time. So we've got this work going on. Nick Buford down in Valdosta. We've got great leaders like Vivian Charles, who's not too far from here. You've got, in Fayette, you've got actually 3 African Americans in their executive committee, who are staunch Republicans. They're, and that's what we want to do. We want to make sure that the people in the bench that we're building is a strong bench of conservatives who believe in our platform. Okay? It will not do us any good to recruit people and put them into leadership just because they're brown skinned. We don't believe in that type of affirmative action. And that is not helpful to minority engagement. Because if they're not standing on the truth and the things that inspired America to be what America is, if they're not looking at the things that have brought liberty and freedom to America and made us sustainable as a great country that serves the world, then we're not doing anything but contributing to the same sickness that is part of the Democrat stronghold on Black Americans in this country. And I leave you with this, and we'll talk a little bit, and if you want to know more about different elements of engagement that we're doing, I want to remind you that if you go to Georgia GOP's website, gagop.org, and then you do a /minority engagement, or engage, /engage, you can sign up for newsletters and e-blasts and things that are specifically from our minority engagement team. And I tell you, it's different. Our team is a little different because sometimes it's hard to teach an elephant to dance. And our party is a big elephant, and it can be clumsy. So the way we've done it is that we're engaged and we are blended with, and John is a big, huge supporter, and he's doing great for us. We're blended with, but we also have sort of some leeway to kind of do things differently, to plant our crops a little differently. And we're doing that, and while we're doing it, we're learning new things. So go to that, and you'll get stuff directly from me about minority engagement, and we want to get you involved and tell you how you can help, give you some tools. Some of the tools are back there. We got some push cards that you'll be able to have. But I want to share this with you. On this push card, these are things that we had focus groups with Black and Hispanics primarily, and some Asians as well. And we came up with sort of a push card that's different than the other push card. Someone hold up that other push card, the Choose Freedom push card, which is a powerful push card. But these push cards right here are the minority engaged. Engaged with the party of Frederick Douglass, Booker T. Washington, Martin Luther King Jr. And the very first thing on here, because of our discussions and focus groups and polling with racial minorities, faith first. And so within our party, there's some movement and some discussion sometimes about, we talk about social issues too much. We talk about religion too much. I'm telling you, minority engagement is only a win-win for the Republican Party. Because Black people, for instance, believe in God, and their church is very important to them. And the attack on the church is eventually going to backfire on the liberals. And if evangelicals within our party ever wanted somebody to help them carry that banner, increasing the number of Black Americans in our party is going to help evangelicals. See, people aren't looking at that part, Faith first is the number one thing they wanted on there. Strengthening families. The Defense of Marriage Act was presented by what Democrat? Bill Clinton. But now President Obama and his ilk have make you think that was something invented by the devil. And it's Republican owned. And that you should never want it. 72% of Black Americans voted for the Defense of Marriage Act. We believe in it. We believe in marriage. Hispanics believe in marriage. Asians believe in marriage. Job creation, valuing ownership, reforming education. We are not, as a diasporic Black American community, we are not going to leave one godless party to come to another godless party. Don't give up God in the Republican Party. Amen. So I want to leave a few minutes for questioning. I think probably it says here at 5 minutes to make 25 minutes. So, there's a lot of pieces. We sought out to identify minorities throughout the state, talk to some of those 45,000 people and ask them to become a little bit more engaged, help us out a little bit more, be not afraid. And yeah, we're going to embarrass each other once in a while, but let's get at it, And to engage people and to make sure that we had the organizations and the infrastructure to be able to engage. We created soft landing spots like the Black Republican Council, like the Hispanic Leadership Council that we're starting actually next week with Ray Ortega, the Asian American Legislative Forums that we've been doing with BJ Pak and Balki Vu. We're creating those soft spaces where some of those people can come and test us out in a quiet little homogeneous way. Just like with yesterday with the black woman, eventually I could, and there are a couple of black women, Asian women, and Latino women, eventually I could tell that they wanted me to get out so they could talk. And so I got out. And that's fine, because what things we're going to do as we develop infrastructure too is we're incentivizing. You go into a homogeneous place where you feel a little safer and you can talk about stuff and not feel weird or not have people look at you like you're a Cuba Traba or a Bigfoot when you show up at a GOP meeting in the morning. And they say, oh, you're brown skin, we're San Francisco, hey, come on over here. And everybody starts making a big fuss, but nobody really follows up with them and sees, can you bring a friend next time? Or did you have any questions? We need to create those kinds of systems. And so we're creating and helping chapters create those systems. We have new organizations that we're spurning, like Engage Futures, which is going to actually create a leadership training program for urban people about civic engagement, about why faith is important in America from a nonpartisan point of view. So we're doing some of the things that liberals have done really well. They've done that. They've done a lot of those kinds of things, and we need to fight back the way they do. But one thing that we won't do, we're not ever again going to back away. We're going to take the fight to the streets. And so we're on radio stations, as you all know. We're doing things in the national media, and even international media has caught on to what we're doing. And we've been interviewed by the Guardian newspaper out of London. They came down and spent 2 days with me, following us around the state. There have been people who have called me from all over the world about what we're doing, and they're rooting for us, even if they're liberals, because they're scared of the nightmare. The nightmare would be that if we don't fix this, there's going to be such a big divide of the haves and the have-nots. So we're going to have some riots that aren't going to be based on race, they're going to be based on economics.
That's right.
And we've got to stop that rioting. So that's why we're committed to this work, and we're serious as a heart attack about this work. Really, we are. We really are. That's how serious it is, because I got a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old. And if I want my son to have the opportunity I have to sell tomatoes on the side of the street without regulation, without somebody said, take that little boy's mama to jail because he's selling red tomatoes on the side of the street. If I want my little son to have that opportunity so that he can sometimes live a middle-class lifestyle, a lifestyle of freedom, if I want my daughter to have that opportunity that she might be able to speak out against government, to rage against the machine that oppresses her if she feels oppressed, I got to have her have some of the freedoms of Dr. King, who only had those freedoms because his dad was a Republican delegate and understood the importance of capitalism and invested in his own home and his own community and invested in a business in his community, had the freedom not to have to depend on the government. And that government that he saw in the 60s as a repressive government that was stopping them from being able to have school choice, we fight that same battle today, was stopping him from being able to have school choice and have his children have school choice. The government that was oppressing him from being able to open up his own business and have economic liberty, that government his son was able to fight against because daddy owned his own. He didn't need the government to keep his phone on. He didn't need the government to turn his lights on. He didn't need the government to take care of his medicine. He was taking care of it himself, and so he could tell the government, get out of my way. But we're creating a system now where most of the people who would benefit from civil rights, and we all did, but racial civil rights that we benefited from in '64, which Republicans started author right from the times of Abraham Lincoln and Douglas, and Jesus Christ authored when he gave us freedom and liberty and faith. But that freedom is not going to come if government continues to grow, because government will control the very people it claims is helping, and that's not freedom. You will never, as a black American, be able to have the freedom to rage against the government machine if you get everything you need from the government. And that's why the civil rights movement is going to be reborn. And the civil rights movement is going to be reborn and recaptured within the Republican Party. And I'm thanking you already in advance for being part of that. Thank you so much.